What do you think of when you hear the word Hollywood? From the glitz and glamour to the A-list celebs to the awesome movies that have entertained us over the years, Hollywood is a pretty magical place. We're introduced to it at a young age and we follow various actors as they grow through their careers. There are breakthrough performances, successful awards shows, and Hollywood weddings all captivating us and our imaginations. Yes, we can feel pretty close to Hollywood at times, which comes across as being pretty magical and happy, at least on the surface. Beyond the red carpets and award shows, away from the theaters and drive-ins, exists a side to Hollywood that many of us rarely hear about, or even knew existed. In fact, it's a side so dark and so rarely mentioned that if you blink, you might just miss it. Come with us while we step behind the curtain and enter the VIP lounge of the elite clubs to show you a grittier and darker side to La La Land. It's a realm where careers are made, lives are lost, and childhood innocence is shattered. From those cute animated films to the awe-inspiring blockbusters, we've been exposed to Hollywood since we were just little kids. As we grew, the actors we followed grew too, and they almost became like family in a way. We watched them act, saw them in interviews, and heard about their relationships through the press. Yet through all of this, we also saw brief glimpses into what was actually going on behind the scenes. That is, every now and then, we'd see a story about how a famous actor had passed away after partying too hard or abusing illegal substances. Generally, people associate overdoses with rock stars from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But in the conservative 90s, the existence of this dark side in Hollywood reared its head in two very public ways. The first occurred in 1993 when River Phoenix passed away after overdosing while at the notorious Viper Room in Hollywood. A few years later, actor Chris Farley was found dead in Chicago, another victim of substance abuse. The loss of two actors who weren't your typical users suggested something bad was lurking in Hollywood. As we entered the 2000s, was the problem gone? Hardly. Rumored users included everyone from Paris Hilton and Britney Spears to Amanda Bynes and Nicole Richie. Even the kings and queens of Hollywood like Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, Jennifer Aniston, and George Clooney were alleged to have snorted their share of blow. It may not shock you too much to know that Miley Cyrus and Lindsay Lohan have confessed to dabbling in harder substance. However, when performers like Lady Gaga, Amy Poehler, Chet Hanks, Dax Shepard, and Demi Lovato all come out, it shows this lifestyle is far more widespread than we know. While some actors like Robert Downey Jr., Ben Affleck, and Alec Baldwin have been able to turn their lives around after falling into a life of hard partying and substance abuse, others have not been so lucky. We only need to mention the untimely and more recent passing of Whitney Houston, Heath Ledger, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and Corey Monteith to prove that this darker side of Hollywood is going just as strong as it was when it took River Phoenix over 2 decades ago. If substance abuse is one of the better-known aspects of Hollywood's dark side, then so too is racism. For years, allegations that minorities were second-class citizens in the industry swirled. Like substance abuse, everyone knew it was there and that it was causing damage, but nothing was done. It all came to a head in 2016 when the nominees for the 4 major acting awards at the Oscars were all white. The incident sparked outrage and raised awareness among everyone that was there was a real problem when it came to giving non-white actors a fair shake in Hollywood. It also spawned a popular hashtag with #OscarsSoWhite. Yet the problem goes deeper than just racist directors or casting agents. In fact, it's believed that movies are often whitewashed because directors often can't get the financing they need if they cast minorities in certain roles. While this seems like a pretty deep issue to resolve, actress Chloe Bennet proved that something as superficial as a name change is required to get around racism in the industry. Benet's actual surname is Wang, and as it turns out, when she was Chloe Wang, there were a few jobs to choose from. Magically, with the change, she's had no trouble finding work in Hollywood and currently stars in Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Disturbing, but true. Unfortunately, Hollywood's dark side doesn't end with substance abuse and racism. There's another story that has often been swept under the rug or ignored altogether until recently. We are, of course, talking about the widespread accusations, allegations, and cover-ups involving child abuse in Hollywood. Disturbingly, for decades, rumors and confessions of inappropriate relations and assault have been steadily leaked out of Hollywood. Over the past few years, this trickle has turned into a steady stream as more actors and those involved in the business shed light on a secret that many in Hollywood have tried to keep in the dark. In 2016, actor Elijah Wood gave an interview that made a lot of people take notice. We all know him as Frodo from the hugely successful Lord of the Rings trilogy, yet before that, Wood was a successful child actor who would have been deeply involved with the system and individuals linked to the emerging Hollywood pedophilia story. He claimed he was protected from any abuse because his parents kept a close watch over all his activities within the industry. Others were not so lucky. The star of Radio Flyer and Flipper said he never witnessed any abuse firsthand, but he said he knew the industry was full of vipers and that child actors had been regularly preyed upon. Others familiar with the abuses said that Hollywood employs or protects dozens of individuals who have abused child actors. Is it true? It seems impossible to deny Wood's allegations that Hollywood is indeed filled with vipers, especially after you see just how many alleged and confirmed pedophiles there are in the industry. In fact, there are too many to mention, so we can only focus on a few. Take Jason James Murphy, for example. Convicted of kidnapping and molestation, he found a job as a casting director for films such as School of Rock and Super 8. Bob Villard was a child manager for such actors as Leonardo DiCaprio and Tobey Maguire. Then he was busted with sexually explicit pictures of children. Once released from jail, he got back into the business before he was again busted for assaulting a 13-year-old client. Mark Collins Rector, owner of a media company, threw lavish A-list parties where he assaulted underage clients and was eventually arrested. It is believed he got away with what he did for so long because he threatened to end the careers of anyone who told on them. Brian Peck was a dialogue coach for Disney and Nickelodeon and appeared in the X-Men franchise. During this time, he was also accused and convicted of sexual assault a couple of times. Speaking of X-Men, director Bryan Singer has had numerous allegations and charges brought up against him, all related to assault or inappropriate acts around or with children. Incredibly, all of this is merely the tip of the iceberg when it comes to pedophilia in Hollywood. In the years leading up to Wood's shocking statement, others had tried to alert the world to the existence of pedophiles and child abusers in Hollywood. The results were often mixed, and the case of Corey Feldman provides a perfect example why. If you watched any films from the 1980s and 90s, then you likely saw Feldman at least a few times. Appearing in hits like The Goonies and Stand By Me, he was one of the hottest child actors around. Of course, that fame came with a huge price. Feldman and his co-stars like Corey Haim were targeted numerous times by predators who worked in Hollywood as agents and managers. According to the actor, assaults were common and adults regularly abused them. At the time, they never said anything because they either believed it was normal or they were somehow at fault. Years later, many of these actors later turned to illegal substances and alcohol. In one disturbing assessment, experts say that 75% of child stars who later go off the rails likely do so because they were abused at some point while in the business. Even when Hollywood's dirty little secret is recognized and turned into a documentary, its impact can be limited. A few years ago, director Amy Berg created a controversial documentary entitled An Open Secret. The film looked at the stories of a few child actors, including Corey Feldman, Joey Coleman from Growing Pains, and Todd Bridges from Different Strokes. All had grown up in Hollywood and claimed to have suffered at the hands of child predators and convicted sex offenders. Unsurprisingly, the film didn't receive much coverage because Hollywood wasn't too keen to back a film that made it and its employees look like monsters. Berg admitted that she had a lot of difficulty trying to get companies to back the film. Like the child victims, were potential movie companies afraid of what could happen to their futures if they blew the whistle? Finally, any discussion of Hollywood's adults abusing the vulnerable wouldn't be complete without a look at the challenges young women face trying to break into the industry. The term the casting couch culture isn't anything new to Hollywood, even if you aren't exactly sure what it means. It refers to the inappropriate advances and demands made towards actors who are auditioning for a part. If you're thinking this sounds like something from the adult entertainment industry, you're not far off. Incredibly, while you may think only new and aspiring actresses are targeted, many established A-listers have confessed to casting couch encounters. Everyone from Gwyneth Paltrow to Helen Mirren to Megan Fox have stories about directors and producers asking for favors during audition. These range from removing clothing to performing certain adults-only acts. Similar to the story of pedophilia, the name of person giving these inappropriate requests is often left out for fear of retaliation and lawsuit. While this mostly affects women, some male actors, including Ryan Phillippe, have come forward saying they too were victims of the casting couch culture. For years, the darkest of Hollywood's secrets revolved almost solely around the hard partying ways and substance of various celebrities, coming to light now and then by the overdose of an A-lister. That whole time, even more sinister secrets involving allegations of sexual assault, exploitation, and pedophilia lurked even deeper. Yet these allegations never came to much, until recently. Whispers and rumors have evolved to the point that this new dark side to Hollywood is likely to surpass the traditional one. While it's unlikely that every perpetrator will be brought to justice and every victim compensated, hopefully this will all get tied up with some semblance of a happy Hollywood ending.